Knighton Tallarico. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives from the Sky radio video show. Kind of crazy I call it a radio show, but you can see me. So it's a new world radio show, radio/video show. So here we are. Spring has sprung, spring equinox. I guess in some places out there it still feels kind of wintry. But it is springtime. And let's take a look at a little big picture before we come down into some details. And let me tell you that today we have a couple of really good guests. We've got Trish Brady. Trish Brady is a person who's a bit of a free spirit. And also she has some acumen around intuition, psychic ability. So we're going to bring her on and she's going to kind of get us tuned in on some things that she's seeing through a card or two that's pulled today. Kind of give the word to the wise going forward. And Deborah, Knighton Tallarico, will be here also. And I'll be interviewing her around Easter questions, Christ, consciousness questions, how Easter is not just through the Christian religion, but through nature and through our ancestors, how they celebrated it. You know, a lot of what is currently a religious holiday had its roots in earlier human times than just after Christianity. Christmas is just a few days after winter solstice. It kind of hooks up real well with that. And then Samhain, on the 31st, October 1st of November, that hooks up real nicely with Halloween. We've talked about that before. It's when the veils are thinner at that time of year. So it's real easy to be able to imagine how people, since the veils are thinner between the outer world and the inner world, how people maybe saw it as kind of dark and fearful what was going on that they usually couldn't see or feel. And so the monsters and things like that, the masks for Halloween. And that's because the veils are thinner. Interestingly, and it's not so much planetarily connected, at least I haven't found the planetary connection to it, except we have a strong Neptune right now, that the veils feel thinner right now to me. I don't know about all of you out there, whether you feel that same way. But for me, the veils seem to be much thinner. I can feel and see and hear the other dimension, mostly see. And I see figures, people, quotation marks. A lot of people believe that the alien realities that are there for us actually have a lot to do with the other dimensions. Some people, I think I've mentioned on the air before, but Dr. John Mack, now not alive, but I interviewed him back on a radio show that I had in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on public radio. And he came on to tell me and the audience about his interviews with people who said they had been abducted by aliens. He's a psychiatrist. And he was going out interviewing. He already had a bias in his mind that the people that he was going to interview really, mentally weren't stable. He found out quite differently. He found out that they are quite stable, but that's not really the issue. He found that they were sane, and the things that they were repeating that they had seen, they had seen. And this is from all over the country. It was not likely any of them talked to one another. And so he's written a couple of books. Let's look him up. John E. Mack. And you'll see a few books that he's written that are really good because they're explained by an extremely intelligent man who's very aware and conscious. And he found that the people that he interviewed, it was true. He just didn't know what dimension. Didn't know. Some people felt like maybe they did really in the physical meet, but others he felt like the meeting was like on another dimension somehow. And but yet he said that's just as real because they were there. It's just they were there on the soul realm and not the physical realm. So yeah, it feels to me like the veils are thinner. Another thing is like think times are changing, and some of what's going on is really can be scary for people. All these mass shootings lately, really disturbing. And I'm not going to Pollyanna it and say, yeah, well, we've got all those mass shootings and it's good, it's great because we're going into a new age. It's not good and it's not great, but it is indicative of some of the issues and the problems and the darkness that's coming up as we shift ages. A lot of you might be thinking, new age, what are you, crazy? What new age? Well, remember, it was winter solstice this last year that I had been following for a long time. It would be like tippy-toeing into the new age. So look at it that way. Look at like the birth being like the crown chakra of the baby just showing. It's got a long way to go. And I don't think the mother, which is all of us, is going to get away without more pain. That's going to happen. Remember that what the new age is more than anything else is a changing paradigm. And that changing paradigm is inside each one of us. Each one of us is going through a process of letting go of an old paradigm and letting in and embracing a brand new paradigm. I'm talking about really on a big scale. Just read your school books and you'll see even that has got programming in it for people. So keep your mind open, keep your heart open, and allow these new energies and allow these new ways of looking at yourself and life in all new ways. A lot of how we feel about the world and the paradigm that it is comes through us and how we feel about ourselves. That's something that never should be forgotten as we go through these shifting times. It's like, how do you feel about yourself? A lot of programming from the old age is about, like for instance, original sin. So there's something wrong with you on the day that you're born. Religions will tell you. Some religions will tell you. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that our society, our culture, inculcates in us these feelings that there is something wrong with us that we need to make up for. And then guilt comes from that space. Trust me, guilt is not spiritual. Guilt is religious, not the same thing. If you're told that there's a certain way that you need to live up to, morally speaking, and you don't live up to it, whatever that value is, maybe that value is valid, maybe that value isn't valued. Like murder, yeah, I'm going to go along with that one. Murder's not a good thing to do. It's a bad thing to do. But it's really, whether there's murder or not murder, that's not the essence of spirituality. Spirituality is about not moralistic. It's about the connection. It's about knowing that everyone, everything in this whole universe is all connected, for better or worse. And so the more we can get into that space, both with our minds and our hearts, the better able we are to be a part of this new paradigm and this new age. And I've talked about it before, but I think the cusp of the new age kind of began when Uranus was discovered in 1781. Remember, before 1781, everybody thought Saturn was the furthest planet out. And still some cultures do believe Saturn is the furthest planet out. But we learned at the Uranus discovery that there are more planets. There was Uranus in 1781, Neptune in 1846, and Pluto in 1930. And the one in 1781 was the beginning of the new age. It was Uranus that was discovered, everybody. Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. And look what was going on at that time that Uranus was discovered. And this is not just coincidental, it's meaningful. The American and the French revolutions were going on. And that's a lot to do with what Uranus is about. It's about breaking away from authority figures, kings and queens, that tell all of us what to do and who to be. What to do and who to be. Some of the old religions are a part of that too. Kind of program you on who you're supposed to be. From an Aquarius standpoint, a Uranian standpoint, you are in charge of your destiny. I mean, in conjunction with the universe, of course. but not a punishing universe, not a judging universe, but a universe that moves just like cycles do in life. It's like the planets move. They move from one season to the next season. And then when you move into a new season, you're moving into a new way of being. And so you adjust, you connect to that new way of being that's a part of the new season that you're moving into. And in a person's individual lives, when planets out there come to a place out there that's connected to where your original planets were the night day you were born, that's when changes happen. Those are called transits. So there's a time for change for everybody. And then a person is readjusting to the universe at those times. And it's the connection, again, it's the connection to the universe and to the truth of yourself that tells you if you're in a spiritually good place or not. So here we are moving into this new age. And, it was kind of like we had the one presidency. And it was more than just the presidency. It was a whole way of life, a whole way of being that I think people started jumping on pretty quickly. And then a new president got elected at the end of the year, and with a whole new direction for the country, for the human family. And now each one of us is working that out. And the problem is that it's tapping into a really deep split in the human family. Like, go back to the Civil War in America. That kind of split has a lot to do with what's going on right now, working that out. And what my advice I give to you is, do your best not to pick a team. You can say, okay, well, the values of the left right now are ones that I agree with. I agree that we should be non-judgmental and non-punishing of a whole race of people. It's absolutely terrible. But it's terrible because it's terrible. And it doesn't mean that there's a uniformed team that we need to join because of that. And that's where we run into danger, is we over-identify with a party, we over-identify with a church, we over-identify with something that we slowly start giving ourselves away to, just like cults do. People give themselves away to it. And as they give themselves away, they lose themselves. And as they lose themselves, they lose the connection, not only to themselves, but the connection to the universe. Because you're meant to be connected not only to your deeper self, your soul, remember, it's soul, but you're also meant to be connected to the universe. And those connections are what keep you aligned spiritually. And sometimes if you get tossed into a rule that you're supposed to be following, you'll find that that rule that you're supposed to be following does not take you into the connection. Now, don't get me wrong, don't take this to the limit and say, oh, well, if I feel like robbing a store or I feel like, maiming my sister, cool, I felt connected, I'm being myself. No, that's not the self that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a self that's connected to everybody else as well as yourself. And if you're connected to everybody else, that's not what the everybody else person wants. It's for you to hurt them, maim them, rob them, etc. So we've got shifting waters now this year. In March, Neptune, transiting Neptune in the sky, went up square to the United States natal Mars. The United States natal Mars is at 21 degrees of Gemini. Neptune is a planet that kind of brings us into a foggier place, really kicks in with our imagination, really kicks in with being in other dimensions. Neptune helps us to go in other dimensions. And sometimes it can be confusing. Like if you're looking out at the sky or the mountains, and you're looking and you see figures. I'm not just saying the ones you're making up, but I'm saying sometimes people look at those things and they really see. It really seems like they're seeing real souls at those times. Here's Neptune. Neptune is like, is it my imagination or am I seeing the soul? And when Neptune transits are up, that's what happens with us. So this one here is Neptune square the natal Mars. That tells me military or police issues are going to be confusing as time goes on. Because this Neptune Mars thing, that's going to continue for another year or so. Move us into April. April 8th, 9th, there's a Mars return. Mars, 21 degrees of Gemini from the natal chart of the United States. That means that day, the 8th, 9th, Mars will be at that same 21 plus degrees. Now, that happens every 2 years. It's not like it happens every 100 years, every 2 years. But it's like when you have a Mars return, whether it's you or whether it's the country, it's like you're re-owning and integrating and honoring that part of yourself. It's in the spotlight. So at a Mars return, issues around police, military, defense of a country, they're all a part of issues that could be coming up at a Mars return. Now we've got more with that on April 11th. And this is a really strong new moon on April 11th. It's a new moon in Aries at about 22 degrees of Aries. And it's, like I said, it's quite strong. It's actually sextile, within a degree of being exactly sextile. That same United States Mars at 21 degrees of Gemini. And it actually is at 22 degrees of Aries. And it squares exactly the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that brought on the COVID and the economy started going bad and the racial issues. That new moon on the 11th touches off, triggers that Saturn-Pluto conjunction that brought on so much in the early part of 2020. On April 20th, so let me also say this, that, like the spring equinox is a time where new beginnings. And so the sun moves into Aries on the 20th of March, and so that's like new beginnings. But the new beginnings aren't really strong enough until the moon comes and joins the sun. When they're both in the same degree, that's when the new moon is, and that's also when the new beginnings are. I'm reluctant in a way to say that, that's the beginning of the year, the Aries time or the Aries new moon time, but that is how I feel. It's just that astrology is interesting in that it's really not about straight lines, it's about circles and cycles. So in a way, astrology itself is going to be more attuned to this world we're moving into, to this Aquarian age. Cycles are about the greater feminine. Straight lines are about the greater masculine. Take a look at the bodily parts of man and woman. You can see what I'm saying. Man, straight line. Woman, circle. So that's the greater feminine. And when you look up at the sky in the daytime, you'll see, if you can see it clearly, you'll see that the sun is a perfectly round circle. You'll see the moon when it's full is a perfectly round circle. The universe is telling us perfect circles. This is what the universe is. That means all is connected all the time. It's not straight lines where like you go so far and then you fall off the earth, which is what people used to think, right? Flat earth. Walk, boom. That's it. You're gone. You walked off the face of the earth. No, it's circles. It's circles again. It's cycles. Just like every year, spring, summer, autumn, winter, cycles, they return, they repeat. That doesn't mean that events are constantly repeating the same exact way, because there's a spiral kind of a thing that goes on. Like you go around the circle, and the next time the cycle takes you up another level, but nevertheless, it's still circles and cycles. And so this is part of the new paradigm, is to be more in touch with the fact that circles and cycles run the universe, and each one of us. And that's the greater feminine, which is getting stronger all the time. Even out in the world when it comes to issues out there, the Me Too movement, etc. It's about the greater feminine. So get used to it, because that's where we're headed. But a lot of people think that there's a pendulum that swings back and forth. Like it'll be all the way to the Democrats, all the way to the Republicans. women over here, men over here. It just goes back and forth. No, not a pendulum. Again, things are in circles and cycles. And so we're moving into a new age, which is a big point in the circle of ages and planets. New moon, new age, new world in Aquarius. In April, after that, April 11th is that new moon I just told you about. Then on April 20th, Jupiter will be semi-sextile Pluto, meaning Pluto at 26 plus degrees of Capricorn and Jupiter at 21 plus degrees of Aquarius. 26 degrees plus on both of them. Almost at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And what's at 27 degrees of Capricorn? The United States natal Pluto. Is that important? Yes. Why is it important right now? Because there's a Pluto return that's going on for the first time for the United States. It's a young country, 200 and some years old. And that's how long it takes for Pluto to come back to itself in a chart. So human beings never get a Pluto return in their lifetimes. Not at this point in time. But the United States is getting a Pluto return. Why is that especially significant? Because Pluto in the United States natal chart is in their second house. That's the military-industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower warned us would take over our rights and our freedoms as human beings. And it has. Take a look at it. Corporations, military. Make a move against them. See where you're going to get. That's the truth. That's the military-industrial complex. And it not only has power over us, it has power over a lot of the world. So with this Pluto return, and we've also had Saturn conjunct that Pluto, Jupiter conjunct that Pluto last year, it's time for us to readjust how we are aligned with that Pluto. We've made it into an empire, but in an Aquarian age, an empire is just not going to make it. Remember, an Aquarian principle. The United States knows about Aquarian principles. Our moon is in Aquarius from our date of our birth. But Aquarius is about everyone, everything is equal. No one's any better, nothing is any better. That doesn't mean that you're playing baseball and one team's not better than the other. Don't take it that far. This just means, like, in essence, who you are, the worth of who you are as a soul is not any better than anyone else. All equal in the eyes of the universe. That's the Aquarian way of looking at things. Aquarius was also about, since there's no kings and queens anymore, it's about individuals responsible for their world and responsible for themselves. And it's about everyone is different. Everyone's an individual. We respect the individuality without judgment. And then that all connects into unity. Unity. Diversity within unity. And that also happens inside each one of us. If we've been judged by a certain part of ourselves, by family and society, if you're a man, you cry a little bit, or you're softer sometimes. If you're a woman and you actually have the nerve to assert yourself, sugar and spice and everything nice, you're not supposed to be doing that. So we have judgments over certain parts of ourselves. So if a woman takes that in as a child, she may have a really strong Mars or a strong sun that can really be someone out in the world, and it'll never grow because they've assumed that society's right, that they're not supposed to be strong. Certainly not stronger than men. That would be one of the sins, wouldn't it? So again, there's the rise of the feminine, and that's not going away. The danger in the near time is that we change from a patriarchy to a matriarchy, which trust me, is not going to be any better, because matriarchy is the same system. I'm better than you, and I'm telling you what to do. We need an equality, again, Aquarius, an equality between men and women. It may happen at first that there's a bit of a matriarchy to make up for where things have been, but long term, that's not going to be aligned with the universe. It's equal. We've been conned into believing the God of the world is a man. How come nobody questioned that ever before? That's a joke. How could that be? There's male and female in this universe. Look at that thing over my shoulder. The yin yang symbol. That's the equality of the opposites. And a circle around them. They're connected. Not at war with each other, not beating each other up, but connected, now and forever connected. Do they have arguments? Yes, certainly, because they're different. but they keep aware of the fact that they're unified. And the universe unifies everything. So we got a long way to go, but there's a whole lot of people that I know, and I know that you know, who are already on that path of seeing things this way. And again, I'm telling you things. Don't just go, oh, well, whatever Leo said. No, you still got to go back inside to yourself and see what resonates and what doesn't resonate with you. Because you, in the Aquarian age, are the one that you ultimately turn to. Yes, sure, we get advice from people. We have mentors, we have teachers. I like doing that for people. But in the end, you have to not take anyone's power away. And a person has to give themselves the empowerment of the truth of who they are and being true to that truth of who they are. Coming back into our calendar, April. I'm only going to talk for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to have Trish and Deborah come on after that. April 20th, like I said, Jupiter semi-sextile that Pluto, which is at the military industrial complex marker of the United States, which is going to be questioned a lot over the next few years, and this year quite a bit as I keep going here. I don't know why I have this down here, but Hitler was born on April 20th. In May, eclipse season starts on May 11th at a Taurus new moon. On the 26th, approximately 2 weeks later, there will be the first of the eclipses in the eclipse season. It'll be a lunar eclipse that has the sun in Gemini and the moon in Sagittarius. So it's a Sagittarian full moon eclipse. It'll be strong. Then on May 29th, well, let me not skip over one thing that's still important in April. Jupiter will be conjunct the United States moon in Aquarius. So we not only have all these things going on with Mars, the Mars return, Neptune, Mars, we've also got Jupiter conjunct the United States moon in Aquarius. So those kind of Aquarian values that the United States has are going to be questioned. Are we aligned with them? Or are we not still aligned with them? And we need to find out. Because if the empire goes down, the empire will go down. That doesn't mean America and what it stands for is going to go down. We're going to go back to our original principles. And one of those principles isn't that we take over the world and we tell everybody this is the way to live because we're living it and it's good. So I can go to war with you because I want you to live the way I live. Then we'll have a better world. How about if somebody came in here and did that? That would be the end of them. So May, lunar eclipse on May 26th. On May 29th, all of our favorites, Mercury will be going retrograde, and it'll stay there till June 22nd. So Mercury will be retrograde during eclipse season, and it's been doing that for a couple of eclipse seasons in a row, by the way, so nothing to worry about. Just something to keep in your mind. On June 5th, Mars in Cancer will oppose Pluto and Capricorn exactly, and it'll be right at that military industrial complex, Pluto. You can see this one's getting touched off a lot. It's right there within a degree. On June 14th, we've talked about this quite a bit. Saturn squares Uranus. It does that 3 times this year. Did it beginning of the year in January, does it in June, and it'll do it again in December. And that's order versus disorder. Saturn obviously is the one that's order. Uranus, remember, the ruler of Aquarius that took down the kings and the queens. Uranus is about waking us up and breaking us outside of any boxes that we are in that are keeping us stale and stuck. So they'll be making a close contact with one another again. And right before that, that's June 14th, right before that is a new moon solar eclipse in Gemini. And guess where it is? There's a theme here, everybody. It's on the United States Mars within about 1.5 degrees. So the United States Mars is touched off quite a bit. I'll give you some times when the United States, when its Mars was touched off, things that happened. President Kennedy, Jupiter was with United States Mars when he was assassinated. When Dr. King was assassinated, the United States Mars was touched off by Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. They were squaring the United States Mars. When World War II began, the United States Mars was triggered. So you can see the kind of things that happen when there's a strong US Mars being aspected. Again, what happens out there, our job is to be a part of the connection with the universe and be changing and shifting our minds and our hearts in alignment, transformationally speaking, with the Age of Aquarius. You do that, I can't guarantee you're going to be totally safe all the time, but I can guarantee you be more likely to be that way than most people because you're aligned with the universe. On Jupiter goes retrograde on the same day as the summer solstice, which is the 20th, 21st, depending on where you live. And then on June 22nd, Mars is conjunct the USA North Node of the Moon, which is always important. It's like a lot of destiny when a North Node is being connected with. So we've got some real turmoil now through at least June. So just be on your toes with that. But what you need to do, what I need to do, is to follow what's inside of us that tells us that we need to shift, change, and transform. Sometimes it's really difficult to shift and change and release things that we're so used to. And, it's just time for it to go, time to be let go. Everything is birthed and everything dies. That's the reality on this plane of existence anyway. And so that we can't change. On this 3D place, that's reality. With our souls, whole different reality. But this is a material plane that I'm speaking to you from, at least partly. You may be hearing me from the other planes too. But as you see me here, that's the 3D material plane. And on that plane, there are certain rules. Paradigms change even on this plane. New ages give us new ways of being, a new paradigm. And we are moving into that new paradigm. And so one of the important things that's around the equality is get in touch with the part of you that sees yourself as superior to anyone, or more likely, that feels inferior to anyone. It's like that value has to leave. It's not real. That's what causes slavery and things like that. I'm better than you. You're not worth anything. I can do what I want with you. Same way that the humans treat animals, same way. You're lesser than me. Treat you any way I want. So you want to be a part of this shifting of consciousness, which moves beyond that kind of way of looking at things. We're all equal. We're all connected. Like, again, it does not mean that you can't be really good at something that someone else is not good at. That's the Leo side of things, which is the opposite of Aquarius. And if things are all Aquarius with no Leo energy, everybody wearing the same uniform and everybody going to sleep. Leo comes in and raises the heart, opens the heart. And as it opens the heart, creates fuel and energy for existence. The sun is the ruling planet of Leo. What do you think? How do you think the universe or the planets would be if that was gone? We're like that in our human bodies and family too. We need that energy to give us light and warmth. You get a Leo person with a great big smile, it can light up a room. So we don't get rid of Leo just because it's an Aquarian age. We just don't. The downside of Leo is, let's say the sun itself was self-conscious. It's shining all this light and all this warmth on everybody. And they give it a mirror. They give the sun a mirror. And the sun looks in the mirror and goes, holy Christ, look at me. I'm spreading warmth and light to everything in this solar system. I am the greatest. It doesn't have a mirror, thank God. So that's where Leos can go. Leos can go into this ego place over what it is that they can do that other people can't do. Leos always need to remember they are another one of the 12 signs. So positive Leo is a good thing. So my next guest is a good representative of that positive Leo energy. She's got Leo rising and moon in Leo. And well, I want you to meet her. And see if I can get her back on. Get her on here. There she is. Hello.
Hi.
This is Trish Brady. How are you today?
I'm great, actually. But I have a couple comments on what you said. Can I tell you?
Of course.
Okay. When you were talking about the veil being thin, it was just like nodding my head, because for me, it's been dreams. And it's almost like, I don't know if anybody else experiences the dream world where it's literally another world. It's not like you're asleep and you're having a dream and you think, wow, that was a weird dream. It was like you weren't sleeping. You were somewhere else.
Yes.
And that's been happening a lot for me lately. And I'm getting messages in them, So the only which is cool, but the only problem with that is that I'm tired because you're not sleeping, and it doesn't come back. But I just really resonated with that. The veil being thin. I think that doesn't necessarily just mean seeing people from other realms. I think it's a kind of our expansion when the veils can be.
And the dreams are other realms too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes people that have passed come through in a dream or something.
Yes.
Or sometimes it's like that alternative reality where somebody who's on the other side of the globe, you have an interaction with, and like maybe you did, maybe. Exactly. That needed to happen. So anyway, I that really struck me that you said that you're experiencing that now too.
Thanks, Drew. And telepathy is of that same world too. So that's like the person on the other side of the world that we're making a connection.
Right. Yeah, and you don't know if they're thinking about you or not.
Exactly.
There's no way you have to call them up and ask them, but a lot of times you can't do that. So you don't know.
This part of life's going to keep getting stronger. It's not just now.
Yeah, I kind of feel that. That.
What else? Something else you wanted to say too, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So you said you were talking about programming. So I got a deck of angel cards, and they're really pretty, because you say Leo, and it's like this pretty, this bright energy. So I picked a card before we started and just thought what it was. And what I picked was honesty and communication. And the first thing that popped into my head is what that meant to me is how so many of us, and you spoke of it, have been programmed to have beliefs about ourselves, whether it was from trauma or childhood or religion, that aren't true. Exactly. And that for us to become our more authentic selves, we have to let go of that programming. Exactly. and learn how to be an effective communicator and to be honest. It starts with yourself. And I don't think we're intentionally dishonest with ourselves. I think sometimes we don't know.
Yeah.
And
we've been programmed so much to think that maybe what we've been programmed to believe about ourselves is true.
Exactly.
We go our whole lifetime trying to undo the things that people have judged us for.
Exactly. And that's exactly what you were talking about. And I think in a line with the astrology in moving into a new age, how everybody's been programmed to a certain extent. Maybe some people don't mind their programs, but I know that I had a lot of programs that I did mind, and it wasn't serving me. And so you had to come to the awareness that, whoa, that was programmed from maybe trauma or various types of trauma. And that's not true. And I think that we have to, that's really important now, especially with the veil being thinner and moving into a new age and being an advocate for yourself and your own truth.
Yes, that's right.
To realize that it's not and there's nothing shameful in admitting that you've been exposed to programming, because everybody has. And it's not always we know when it doesn't work for us, when it creates conflict and we're behaving in ways that we don't want to and we can't seem to stop. I think that just having the awareness of I remember somebody saying that to me. I remember believing that, and I don't want to believe that anymore. And I think we can.
Exactly. Thank you.
No.
And there's also some people out there that I think you began to say something around that they've been so well programmed that really they don't see any. There's nothing to work through.
Yeah.
It gets generation to generation passed down a certain way of being. You can see it like a mother treats her kids a certain way, then the daughter treats her kids that same way, then the granddaughter treats her, and they don't really think that they were programmed. They think it more like I'm just doing the way that is the right way to do it, the way my mom did it or my grandma did it.
Right, or following a tradition, and they don't.
Right,
it's not even. There's not. I think that what happens is that you lose your own authenticity of what's real and what's honest to you, and what may be honest to you may not be necessarily how you were raised or with the religion that you were raised with, and and I think now is the time, because there's been of this COVID and the things that are going on politically in the world, that I think that there are quite a few of us out there that took this COVID time because so much had to stop.
Yeah, that's right.
In my case, so many of my patterns stopped because I couldn't behave in certain ways because of the restrictions, that it reflected back, and that it was a tremendous opportunity for growth and be an honest communication with myself of what was behavior based on a program.
Yeah, and I know from talking to people that a lot of people have had the same experience that you've had with the COVID. Finally got some time to be alone with themselves, and the material world wasn't the whole thing anymore. Now they got to see those world beyond just the material world, or accomplishing something or making a task done. Because that's another thing that's America. I don't know if it's the whole world for sure, but one thing I know about America is that we're taught that we're not worth anything unless we're producing something.
Right. What's a value is something that you can actually see, not something that you are, or something that like an energy or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Only the tangible. And just be with the baby sometime. Be with the baby, and you'll know what it means to love something that doesn't accomplish anything. And there's something inside each one of us that's like a child or a baby, and we need that same kind of support and attention, that we're good no matter if we're accomplishing or not.
I guess since there are no accidents in the universe, and that we had this COVID first, and then these astrological changes that have been thousands of years coming, that in the age of Aquarius, where it is about unity and diversity, that it's only if we're able to find our own, I think, if we're able to find our own sort of honesty in our voice and honesty in our kind of integrity in who we are, that is what will move it into new age. But from what I'm hearing, from what you say, like right now, everything is so divided that and I think that like in that division is also sort of internal for one who is in like the baby stages of the awareness of that there's things that they believed about themselves that aren't true, or they've been programmed. And it's really difficult. It's like the crowning of a birth, like you were talking about, is also the crowning of the birth in your own awareness of, wow, I don't have to believe these things about myself anymore.
Exactly. Tricia, it was wonderful having you on today. I'm hoping you're going to come back.
I would love to come back. Thank you, Leo.
Have you come back. And there's a lot to talk about Trish too. She's an author. We'll talk about that next time. And she also is someone who has lived an unusual life. And we'll talk more about that the next time she comes on.
Okay. Thank you, Leo.
Take care, Trish. Bye.
Bye.
And without further ado, I don't see Deborah's face on here, but I'm thinking she's there. There she is. Let me bring her on. Hey, Debs.
Hey, Leo.
How are you?
Good. Wonderful show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, she's my wife, so I've programmed her to say that. What a wonderful show I'm giving. So, Deb, Easter time, I'm sure a lot of our audience is Christian, or at least culturally Christian. And that's the death of Christ on the cross, symbolically supposed to be Good Friday. And then on Sunday, tomorrow, is the resurrection. You want to give us some of the deeper parts of what Easter is?
Yes. Well, it's multi-layered because the name Easter actually comes from the name of a Germanic goddess, Eostre. So if you look at the spelling Eostre, you can see how the name Easter came. So it came from this goddess, Germanic goddess, who is the goddess of the dawn, the goddess of spring, the goddess of new life, right? And in many stories, she has the rabbits with her. And so this whole theme, and it's connected with obviously spring, right? The return of spring. And I just learned something which was really interesting in preparing this is in 325 AD is when a council got together in the church and they decided when the date of Easter was going to be. And it's totally connected to, as you and I know, but the listeners may not all know that Easter is always, because, it's a changing day. It's never the same every year. It's not like Christmas is the 25th of December. So Easter is always the first full moon after, it's the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So it's totally connected. It's totally connected with the spring equinox and the full moon.
Yes.
And most people don't even realize that. And so there's this theme of, spring and new birth and the eggs and the painting of the eggs, bright colors. It's like, the sun coming back, new life. And and also chickens start producing more eggs in the spring. And then the rabbits, there's lots of rabbits because rabbits are busy mating and they're the symbol of, and they're the symbol of fertility. Yeah. And they're the symbol of fertility, which is the energy of spring. The earth mother is coming alive. There's, the animals are mating, people feel more frisky in, as spring. It's like new life is springing forth from the earth. And so, and it's all connected. It's always connected to the cycles of obviously the cycles of the earth, the spring. And just like actually all the holidays are connected to the cycles of the earth.
Exactly.
And that's the same with the Christian Easter and connected to the resurrection of Christ. And what's interesting is, so there's since ancient times, predating Christianity, were the ancient myths of rebirth and resurrection. And Christ is another one, another example of this cycle of rebirth and resurrection. So back in Egypt, Isis and Osiris, how Osiris was dismembered by Seth, his dark brother, and then Isis gathered all his parts back together, put him back together, and he was resurrected. And in that myth, it was always connected to the season of spring and the rising of the Nile, which meant the beginning of the fertility of the earth and the resurrection of the land. And
talk about transformation. It's like winter to spring. That's one of the most powerful transformation of our year from one season to another.
Exactly. And also in Sumer, they had, Inanna, the descent of Inanna, where Inanna was annihilated, and then she was brought back to life, and then she rose up again. And Ishtar in Babylonia, those are the ancient goddesses that went through the same kind of death and rebirth process.
There's something else I want to throw in here, and that's that speaking of the changing of ages, for instance, we're moving from an age of Pisces to an age of Aquarius. And so Pisces is the time that started with the birth of Christ, actually. Around the time of the birth of Christ is when the whole Piscean age began. So as we move into this new age of Aquarius, I know we want to take with us the best parts of what the Age of Aquarius are. So to me, one of the best parts of the Age of Aquarius, and maybe you can explain what I mean to people, is that having consciousness, Christ consciousness, is something that we can bring with us into the Age of Aquarius. You want to explain to people what Christ consciousness is?
Yes, and so what you're saying is from the Piscean age, what we want to bring the gifts of the Piscean age into the Age of Aquarius. And so, yes, Christ consciousness. So, Christ consciousness is really about that greater consciousness and awareness that we are divine, that we are a son or daughter of Source, creation, universal source, God, goddess, all that is. And Christ came to show us something, right? And if any of you have ever read anything about the Essenes, this was predestined that he was going to come and he was going to be an example. And I believe Mary Magdalene was all part of it. They were part together in this. They were great spiritual teachers, both of them. But Christ consciousness is a lot about love, unconditional love, and the heart, the sacred heart. And bringing unconditional love and compassion and forgiveness to everything. Because, and he had to go through it and endure being crucified and saying, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He brought love, and he had to bring love and forgiveness into the darkest places. And so we need that Christ consciousness. And, many people have been waiting for, the return of the Christ. And I have always believed that the return of the Christ is the return of Christ consciousness within each of our hearts, where we know we are not separate from the divine. We are.
Or from each other.
Or from each other, yes. And that each of us is divine. You're divine, I'm divine, the earth is divine, the trees, the flowers, the animals, that we're all connected in this unity consciousness. And I really believe Christ consciousness is unity consciousness from the heart and love, and bringing that love to everything, because love heals all.
Without a doubt. And don't forget also that the compassion that Christ brought, and compassion for those people that had the roughest time fitting into the world, people that suffered the most, he had compassion for. And well, we sure need a lot of that right now. I see that lacking in our culture sometimes. Exactly.
He had unconditional love and compassion for every being. He didn't separate himself. He didn't outcast people or judge them. Yeah. He really had that humility. So, having that humility and forgiveness and seeing the divine perfection in each being, that's Christ consciousness. Seeing the divine spark, even if it's a small spark, in like a murderer, that's Christ consciousness. You can see in that person who's an outcast of society or whatever, you can see the divine spark of light of God's source, divine source within them. And as you feed that and send love to that one, that light grows, that divine light grows. To me, that's Christ consciousness. Yes. And we need that right now to transform our world. And we need to not separate light and dark either.
Exactly.
And, and see the light like the yin yang symbol.
Just like, like the yin yang.
See the light in the darkness,
and
the darkness in the light. And, to really work with that and come into that embodiment of unity consciousness and living from your sovereign divinity and seeing that sovereign divinity in everything, because everything ultimately is God, source, the divine. Nothing's separate from that. And to me, that is Christ consciousness, where you start seeing nothing is separate from source.
Yes.
We all came from source and we return.
Thank you, Deb. I also want to say before I let you go, Deborah.
Yes.
That people, everybody doesn't know what you do. I mean, Deborah's like a wonderful ceremonialist. And when people go through different rituals in their life, whether it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah or coming of age or whatever it is, Deborah gives these wonderful, beautiful rituals and ceremonies that really help people stay connected to this place that we're talking about being connected. Someone just wrote in about
Saint Francis of Assisi embodied that.
Yeah, and we know that's true.
Absolutely, and that prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi is, to me, my favorite prayer. I just love that prayer. It's such an amazing prayer about bringing love to everything, and you know that prayer. So
that's Christine that wrote that. So thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
Let me go a little further with Deb too now. So she does all the rituals and she does the ceremonies. She is a priestess. She's been ordained as a priestess. I mean, a lot of people call themselves everything nowadays, but Deborah is an embodied priestess. She's at that stage of life where she really is a woman of wisdom.
Thank you.
So, and a priestess. I'm not saying that because she's my wife. It's the truth.
Yes.
And she also is a great counselor. Deborah, if people want to get hold of you, you can just ask you some questions.
Yes.
How can they do that?
So they can, you can visit my website, which is GaiaSophiaTempleOfTheHeart.com. And you can also reach me at Elilia, which is ELELIA, which is my spiritual name, at GaiaSophiaTempleOfTheHeart.com. And I offer counseling and past life regression. And like Leo said, ceremonies. I also use flower remedies and crystal and sound healing and ceremonies. I love rites of passage ceremonies. And just my counseling is really to take people through, rites of passage and back to themselves, to the divine in them, and to really learn to love and honor who they are, and to heal any traumas that they've had in their lives and come back to that core essence of the divine inside them.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. Appreciate you being on. And everyone ought to know out there that Deborah's going to be back on many times. It's good to have you, Deb.
Thank you so much, Leo.
Bye, honey.
And I just wanted to say that you really were talking about Christ consciousness so much of the show today. That
not even thinking of it in those terms when I was saying
Aquarian, it. And in some ways, maybe the Aquarian and Piscean consciousness
coming together.
And they kind of overlap.
As we're in transition. I'm sure you're right. Gotta let you go now because we only got a couple more minutes. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
So if you want to get a hold of me, best way is to write Soulus, SOULUS, at AOL.com. I've also got a website, Knighton and most importantly, I've got a blog that I'll have to jump on as soon as this show is over, and you can reach that at www.spiritualtherapy.wordpress.com, www.wordpress.spiritualtherapy.com, or spiritualtherapy.wordpress.com. Sorry about that. And 2 weeks I'll be back. Keep this in mind now. Next week on the 11th is a strong new moon in Aries. If you've been slowly going through stuff, it doesn't feel quite right to get started or to say this or that. After that April 11th new moon in Aries, you'll feel a lot of energy to get going and to start up whatever it was that you haven't felt like starting yet, or saying something that you knew you wanted to say and haven't been able to. Aries is about straightforward, direct talk. It's about movement forward. It's about motivation to do things. It's about being true to yourself. And I don't mean a selfish be true to yourself. I mean, who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for. You dig yourself in on those things. You stay strong. You stay firm. And you don't let anybody take you out of those places. Compromise comes for other things. But it doesn't come from your values and the truth of who you are. That's the I am principle, and that's Aries. So it was good being with you all. Got a lot more people are going to come on around alien, extraterrestrial, and a lot of people that have said they've been abducted. A lot of people that have said they saw UFOs. I've said before, this is going to be a year where we get much more of that coming to all of us. And I want to be a part of that and show you some of the highlights of this movement into knowing that we aren't alone. Take care, everyone. See you next time.